Assalamualaikum everyone, and welcome to this session on expanding and strengthening Pakistan's digital ecosystem. My name is Neha Rashid, and I'm with the Center for Digital Transformation here at Tabadlab. This session is really a continuation of our digital deep dive series, which we've had 2 previous episodes on. In previous sessions, we've discussed issues such as the importance of creating a digital vision and talked about some of the key elements that need to go into any digital vision framework, especially as we think of it from a national lens. Obviously, the path that we are, starting from is the understanding that digital has the potential to boost both economic growth in a country and also to create benefits from a human development lens. One of the things that has been clear through our conversations with both global leaders and as well as local leaders is that Pakistan in many ways has fallen behind regional and global peers when it comes to access and uptake of digital services. We see that in core numbers such as the fact that there are 121 million broadband subscriptions in a country of 230 million people. And obviously over here, when we talk about subscriptions, we're not talking about unique subscribers. So when we think of numbers like this and we think about the core gaps that exist between geographies and between different groups such as women, etc., one of the things that becomes clear is that as we embark on a digital journey for Pakistan, we need to bring these excluded populations into the digital ecosystem. To learn more about the work that's being done right now, we're talking to people across the range of actors in the ecosystem, so representing both government, business, and civil society, and talking to them about the digital ecosystem from an inclusion and quality perspective. Our goal with this conversation is to better understand the successes that have taken place, areas that we are doing good work in. It's to understand the barriers to success that they might be facing at the moment, and then also future interventions that can help us boost the digital ecosystem in Pakistan. So without any further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce our amazing panel. To begin with, I'd like to introduce Mr. Haris Chaudhry. He currently serves as the CEO of the Universal Service Fund of Pakistan. Before joining the USF, he has led senior management positions in multinational organizations such as Citibank, ABN AMRO, Barclays Capital, and Credit Suisse in the USA and Middle East. He is an expert in financial planning, strategic management, and strategy, and has a proven track record of persevering in crisis situations and helping businesses turn around. Second, I'd like to introduce Mr. Asim Hussain, who serves as the CEO at Ignite. Mr. Asim Hussain has more than 25 years of experience in business and financial services in both the US and Pakistan. Before joining Ignite, he headed organizations such as the Pakistan Software Export Board and Comsat's Internet Services for many years. He also worked as the project director for World Bank's Financial Inclusion and Infrastructure Project. Welcome. Next, we have with us Fariha Aziz. Fariha is a Karachi-based award-winning journalist. She is the co-founder and director of Bolo Bhi, where she focuses on issues of free speech, right to information, and online privacy to ensure that all segments of society have access to internet in a secure and transparent manner. And finally, we have with us Mr. Farooq Hamnani. Mr. Farooq serves as the VP Finance and Operations at Uran, fintech focusing on women's financial inclusion in Pakistan. Before Uran, Farooq was the COO at Nayape, and he has extensive experience in the banking and financial industry. So welcome, everyone. We really appreciate you making time to have this conversation with us. And to kick off, I think we'd love to focus first on the issue of connectivity. So in the many conversations that we've had with experts, what's clear is that providing good connectivity, and by that we mean quality service which is uninterrupted, is at the core of creating a vibrant digital ecosystem. From a supply side perspective, in particular, we're interested in understanding to what extent have efforts to invest in the country's digital infrastructure, especially in underserved areas, been successful in improving digital inclusion? Harisab, to you with that question first.
Thank you for inviting me, Neha. You said good quality, I would say meaningful connectivity. So
Yeah.
meaningful connectivity is a way forward for any digital ecosystem in any country, in any area. As far as Pakistan is concerned, unfortunately, in the past, our licenses for 3G and 4G was delayed for over 7, 8 years. For example, जो हमारे neighboring countries है इंडिया और बांग्लादेश वहाँ पे 3G 4G के लाइसेंसेस हमारे से कुछ 3 4 साल पहले हो चुके थे सो ऑब्वियसली उनके रोल आउट और कनेक्टिविटी उस हिसाब से बेहतर होगी but I think we should not get more into the past and dig what has happened. What we should focus is on the future. पाकिस्तान में जिस तरह भी आपने नंबर्स बताए कनेक्टिविटी इज इम्प्रूविंग उसमें स्पेशली अगर मैं आपको अनसर्व्ड और अंडरसर्व्ड एरियाज जो हमारा यूनिवर्सल सर्विस पाकिस्तान का कोर मैंडेट है at this point of time we have invested approximately 115 billion rupees for the infrastructure of ICT in unserved and underserved जो कि रूरल और रिमोट एरिया जिनको हम कहते हैं इन एरियाज में 2006 से 2019 में we have invested approximately 55 billion rupees or 2019 से to date which is 3 years and 3 months we have invested over 55 billion and why we have done is that because now everyone has realized that connectivity is the most important thing for any digital ecosystem अनफॉर्चुनेटली क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ आरपू जो है जो एवरेज रेट पर यूज़र है जो है वो बहुत कम है इसलिए जितने भी टेलको ऑपरेटर्स हैं वो सिर्फ जहाँ जहाँ कमर्शियल केस या सेंस बनता है वो वहीं पे जाते हैं That's why USF has been established and unfortunately in the past it has not been very productive in terms के बहुत ज़्यादा वहाँ पे investment rulers and remote areas की नहीं हुई So we at USF 3 years ago we revisited our program and we thought कि जहाँ जहाँ नहीं है we have to accelerate और हमें बहुत ज़्यादा काम करने की ज़रूरत है So to give you an example इस टाइम पे यूनिवर्सल सर्विस फंड जो है approximately 8 to 9% of the total towers of पाकिस्तान के जो है उसको सब्सिडाइज कर चुका है और ये सारे रूरल और रिमोट एरियाज हैं और अगर मैं आपको उसकी फर्दर सेग्रीगेशन बताऊं सिर्फ बलूचिस्तान में 40% of network and I'm very comfortable and pleased and proud to say that 70% of the 4G network in the whole Balochistan is through the subsidy of Universal Service Fund. इसी तरह एक हम अनफॉर्चुनेटली जो हमने पास्ट में एक ऑप्टिक फाइबर जो है जो एक बहुत कोर कंपोनेंट है एक स्ट्रॉन्ग डिजिटल इकोसिस्टम का वी लैग बिहाइंड जस्ट टू पुट सम फैक्ट्स एंड फॉर बेटर अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ लॉट ऑफ व्यूअर्स हमारे जो टावर्स हैं वो लेस देन 10% जो हैं वो फाइबर के साथ कनेक्ट हुए हैं अगर ये रेशियो हम चाइना के साथ देखें तो वो ऑपोजिट है वहां पे 90% ऑफ टावर्स आर कनेक्टेड विद फाइबर बैकहॉल इसी तरह फिलीपींस इंडोनेशिया इंडिया बांग्लादेश मतलब और डेवलपिंग कंट्री ये सब रेशियो बिटवीन 30 to 45 और 50% के आसपास रेशियो है उसकी रीजन ये है कि एक obviously because our average rate per user is very low so obviously that requires a lot of investment and it's a very labor intensive work and some policy issue which has been addressed by now which is right away इसलिए मीनिंगफुल कनेक्टिविटी इतनी अच्छी स्पेशली रूरल एरियाज में प्रोवाइडिंग सो नाउ व्हाट वी आर डूइंग टुवर्ड्स इज दैट हम लोगों ने 1-2 साल पहले एक असेसमेंट की कि पाकिस्तान में तकरीबन 6000 यूनियन काउंसिल है आउट ऑफ 6000 यूनियन काउंसिल देयर आर 4200 यूनियन काउंसिल ऐसी हैं जिनमें कोई फाइबर का नोड नहीं सो वी हैव लिस्टेड डाउन एंड सेड कि लेट्स on this and let's try to complete this in the next 5 years and हमने roughly estimate that we'll be looking at approximately 35 to 40,000 kilometers of fiber to cover every union council of Pakistan. So we laid that program and we started and till now in a year and a half we have contracted approximately 14 to 1500 UCs which is 1/3 what we planned in 5 years in a year and a half so we are on the track and out of 1400 approximately 650 UCs have been covered so far in a year. Well, what I mean to say is that कि वो उन यूसीज में फाइबर पहुंच गए. अब जिस तरह टेक्नोलॉजी इवॉल्व करती रहती है, वी ऑल्सो लर्न एंड वी ऑल्सो इवॉल्व विद दैट. सो व्हाट वी रियलाइज इज कि अब हम इस तरह करते हैं कि हम इस डिजिटल इकोसिस्टम को और स्ट्रेंथन करने के लिए, क्योंकि मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक कंडीशन इतनी अच्छी नहीं है, टेलकोस बहुत ज़्यादा इन्वेस्ट नहीं करे, सो व्हाई डोंट वी उस प्रोग्राम में हम मैंडेटरी रिक्वायरमेंट करेंगे 25% ऑफ द साइट्स उस एरिया में जो आती हैं उसको भी कनेक्ट किया जाए थ्रू यूएसएफ सब्सिडी, और उसकी ओपेक्स कॉस्ट जो है यूनिवर्सल सर्विस फंड बेयर करेगा, जो वी स्टार्टेड. और उससे ये होगा कि हमारा भी जो 9% कनेक्टिविटी है फाइबर के थ्रू टावर्स के साथ, दैट विल इंशाल्लाह इंक्रीज एंड will go up to, just by universal service fund contribution, will between 18 to 22%. उसके साथ what we have done is that which I'm very proud to talk about it, is that इस प्रोग्राम में हमने जितने भी स्कूल्स और कॉलेजेस और हॉस्पिटल्स हैं उनको हमने डिस्काउंटेड रेट पे फाइबर देना शुरू कर दिया. सो फॉर एग्जांपल एक एरिया है सदर्न पंजाब का, और वहाँ पे हमने 500 किलोमीटर्स की फाइबर डाली है. उस एरिया में फॉर एग्जांपल 50 या 60 यूनिट काउंसिल्स हैं, 100 यूनिट काउंसिल्स हैं, और वहाँ पे अगर फॉर एग्जांपल 50 गवर्नमेंट के स्कूल हैं, 40 गवर्नमेंट के हॉस्पिटल्स हैं, हम उनको कह रहे हैं कि जी यू यूज बेस्ट कनेक्टिविटी, हुएवर द सर्विस प्रोवाइडर जो वहाँ पे दे रहा है वो आपको कहीं जगह 25 और कहीं जगह 50% डिस्काउंटेड पे देगा. So the cost can also be shared, or people start getting used to do meaningful connectivity, which I say that. This is our flagship program, and what we have done is that approximately हम लोगों ने I would say roughly around 9,000 kilometer के fiber के contacts हमने sign किए in less than 2 years. And just to give you an example, 2006 से 19 तक हम लोगों ने total 8,000 kilometer fiber के contacts sign करके ले की. So out of 9,000 a year and 6 months or 7 months has passed this program, so तकरीबन 4,000 kilometer fiber is on the ground right now. And we intend to do it another roughly 3,000 kilometer this financial year. So I'm confident after in चीजों के बाद we will have a better connectivity, especially in the rural and remote areas, and we will have a better digital ecosystem. And I agree कि अब कोई भी आपको कोई बिजनेस करना है, कोई ई-स्वीट की सर्विसेज लॉन्च करनी है, उसका बेसिक प्लेटफॉर्म कोई भी है, उसके लिए बेसिक कंपोनेंट इज मीनिंगफुल कनेक्टिविटी, एंड इट हैज टू कम थ्रू फाइबर. क्योंकि फाइबर के लिए होगा, अगर माइक्रोवेव पे होगा तो अनफॉर्चुनेटली वो कभी भी आपको क्वालिटी या वो नहीं मिलेगी, और आपके बिजनेसेस उस हिसाब से ग्रो नहीं कर पाएंगे. So that's all I have to say as far as the connectivity is concerned in terms of Pakistan की rural remote areas का.
चलें बाद में sign करते हैं.
नहीं, बिल्कुल. That is, I mean, it's great to hear about the specifics of the great work that's being done in this area, because just from the numbers that you've given, what's clear is that we're planning over kind of 25% growth in the amount of fiber that's being laid, just through the work that's going to be done. We're also going to hopefully see a doubling in the number of fiberized towers. And I think just for our audience, it's important to just disaggregate some of these concepts for a second, because the majority of connections in this country are very much, dependent on mobile broadband. And we're not seeing a lot of connections come up kind of just for fiber to the household or fiber to the business. And the fact that we are going to be expanding the core fiber optic network of this country means that those numbers can start rising. So I think that those are kind of fantastic things. One of the things I really appreciated you saying was that, we need to provide meaningful connectivity to people if we want to expand the digital ecosystem. And often when we talk about kind of, what meaningful connectivity looks like, what we realize is that it's crucial to not only give people connectivity, but also to equip individuals with the skill sets they need to be able to use that connectivity in a way that is useful to their kind of lives. And so, I'd like to pivot to Asim Saab and just, talk to you about some of the work that Ignite has been doing in this area, specifically with reference to skilling, and learn more about the programs and processes that have been put in place in Pakistan to build digital capacity, and learn about some of the tangible shifts that you might have observed through your work across the various segments of the population you target through these kind of initiatives. Asim sir, you're on mute right now.
Actually, I'm unmuted.
Oh, sorry. Go for it. I might be on a lag.
Okay. Thank you, Neha. Actually, I firmly believe that if Pakistan has to improve its IT exports, then it's proportional to the trained human capital in our country. So, the higher the number of IT professionals and engineers that we have who have the skill set needed by foreign clients, that will trigger the growth of our IT exports. So, Ignite had conducted some market research and surveys to identify the areas where our IT graduates need skill sets to increase our exports. And we came up with this Pakistan's largest online training program called DigiSkills. Um, Last year, it was launched in 2018 initially with 10 freelancing courses such as um, search engine optimization, digital marketing, e-commerce, AutoCAD, QuickBooks, different courses, and see
Asim sir, I think there might be an issue with the internet connection.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. I think it
Okay,
just lagged for a few seconds. So you
right.
might have to restart. Sorry about that.
Okay. So I was saying that based on our surveys and findings, we decided to launch Pakistan's largest online training program called DigiSkills, initially with 10 freelancing courses in different areas, search engine optimization, digital marketing, e-commerce, WordPress, etc. And we received around 2 million enrollments in the first 3 years of that training program. And we have added 5 more courses in video editing and animation, data analytics and business intelligence, communication and soft skills, because it's also very important for our freelancers to learn how to communicate with the client, how to write a good proposal to win the project, because of course they are competing with international freelancers. By the way, Pakistan is uh, presently ranked fourth in the global freelancing market in terms of growth. Last year it was around 47%. So we have a huge potential for growing our freelancing exports, and we are adding new courses every couple of years based on the needs of our freelancers. And in future, we also planning a hybrid training program and boot camps for programming languages, because it's hard to learn programming skills online. We plan on having a hybrid environment where we'll have labs also. Of course, these freelancers can watch the lectures online, but the assignments and exercises will be done in a lab-based environment, so that they have a better skill set by the time they complete these boot camps and trainings. Um, so the current number of enrollments we have received in our DigiSkills program has crossed 3 million. The unique number of freelancers is around 1 million, because on average these freelancers are taking 3 courses. So our goal is to grow it to 5 million enrollments by next year, and to add more courses, especially programming courses like in mobile apps development, Python, mean stack, merge stack kind of courses to build the skill set of our freelancers so they can increase their earnings also. By the way, we had also conducted an earnings study on our rich skills trained freelancers. And according to that study, their earnings were around $290 million last year. So our goal is to take our freelancing exports to $1 billion by 2025 or earlier. Thank you.
No, that's really great to hear. I think what's clear from your kind of comments and the programs that you're describing is that it's very much focused on making Pakistanis competitive in a global economy and giving them kind of that higher level of digital skills that will allow them to compete in an international market. And I guess one of the things that does strike me is, you know, even to get into a program like that, there is kind of a core digital skilling requirement. And I was wondering, do you guys have any plans to expand the scope of the program beyond kind of skilling higher level, internationally competitive workers, and trying to look at skilling in some of these lower areas where maybe at the primary school level or just kind of imparting basic digital knowledge at this point in time?
Yeah, it's actually very interesting. We have recently completed a study with Arthur D. Little and I Consult. We had conducted this study on the startup and freelancing ecosystems of Pakistan. And one of their recommendations was that we start teaching this skill set from the high school level, like we have these training programs even in our schools and colleges, so that our students don't have to wait till they join the universities to acquire these skills. We can start teaching them these skills, especially in entrepreneurship and freelancing, even from the school and college levels. So that is an area where we'll be collaborating with ATC to reform the curriculum um, at the school and college level, to add courses in entrepreneurship and freelancing at these levels also.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fantastic because it's definitely a gap that still exists in the market, and I think it's something that we need to be focusing on. But actually, kind of, I think this links into some of the work that we're seeing more on the demand side, especially some of the work that we've seen come through organizations such as Oran. It's a female-specific fintech. You guys work on digitizing Roscas, and at the same time, it sounds like there's also an element of training that's happening for what is traditionally an extremely financially excluded segment. So, as we think about kind of including more people and businesses into the digital space, um, Farooq, what are some of the issues that often emerge amongst different communities that can perhaps explain the initial inertia that we face in getting into the digital ecosystem? And then what kind of work have you guys done to help kind of deepen people's digital maturity once they are onboarded into the digital ecosystem as well? Any lessons from that?
Hi, thank you for having me over, Neha. Um, as we discussed, that access to internet is the starting point, serves as a pathway for people to be able to access use cases, if we were to say, to ensure that they are a part of the digital journey in the country. At Oran, we have been trying and have been largely successful in terms of providing those use cases. And access to financial services, in my opinion, is one of the largest use cases uh, that needs work, significant amount of work in this country. Um, so for example, when we talk to communities, and people are not, people are aware that Roscas, or committees as we call them in our society, have been in place and have been uh, running as informal sources of finance for the longest time. So in order to formalize those financial services, access to technology, access to internet is a must. However, so there is certain difference in terms of relying on internet and technology, and also providing that trust to people to be able to say, I'm going to put my money in a platform that is purely digital, that may or may not have a physical presence, may or may not have a face behind the services. But in terms of transparency, in terms of access to information, in terms of availability, those sort of things build trust within the society and within the communities to be able to say, we are okay with putting in money in a service or a product that will be available to me as and when I want. Our women have historically been sidelined in our society in terms of access to financial services. When we started our operations and the research that we did, the numbers were quite low. They have been growing, but it's not encouraging in terms of inclusion of women in the financial services area, and not just women. It's also people who do not have access to bank accounts. State banks initiatives have done a lot of good work in the past couple of years in terms of providing access to digital payments. However, access to credit at good terms, building that credit history to be able to then access larger amounts of money for businesses. Those sort of things we've seen develop as our business has grown over the past 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in every conversation that we've had, financial inclusion and just kind of payments in particular, like the ability to make digital payments, the ability to get deeper into the digital financial ecosystem is mentioned as one of the kind of core use cases that can help with the building of a digital economy. And I think largely, yes, it is particularly, like, I think we are a country with low financial inclusion rates overall. I think currently, according to the last Findex, about 21% of the adult population in Pakistan is financially included. And the gap, of course, widens significantly for women. So these are all kind of big areas of concern. What I appreciate you mentioning, though, is that it takes a great level of trust to put your money into something that you cannot see, especially when the ecosystem is at such a nascent stage, and just trust in the network hasn't yet been established. And so thinking kind of from that angle, the fact that lack of trust in digital technologies can hamper a person's willingness to join the digital ecosystem and to then also deepen their digital interactions. Fariha, I'd love to hear from you, from a regulatory and cultural perspective, what key elements do we need to establish to ensure that trust is built amongst users and to help them feel online when they are participating in online transactions?
So the first thing that we need to sort out is what we are mired by is regulatory uncertainty and legal uncertainty, right? Vis-a-vis the policies and the laws. And so you can't promote internet as this go-to platform and services when you find them blocked overnight. Right? And we've seen this with the example of TikTok, or even for that matter, PUBG, which was then litigated before the Islamabad High Court. When it's become a source of earning, livelihood, revenue, and we've come a long way in terms of this being recognized as legitimately so, right? Because not very long ago, about 10 years ago, especially social media platforms, the internet was written off as just an entertainment platform. And we know that's not true. Then, for instance, stability with your access. Prior to this, there was discussion around access, but I see access issues as twofold. One is the ability to get connected. Who is able to do that? So in terms of the affordability, it's one. The areas which have internet connectivity is the second. And this came up a lot during COVID lockdowns, when a lot of students who came from various areas from the country to urban centers had to go back. But they were at a disadvantage because when they went back, they didn't have those stable internet connections. So they could not keep up and were not at par with their peers who were in urban centers. And even in urban centers, earlier Harsab spoke about meaningful connectivity. But connectivity can't be just you have an internet connection which fluctuates multiple times a day. And so any professional work that you're trying to do, any academic work you're trying to do is constantly disrupted. There is so much opportunity within the academia, professional environments, etc., to use this as a medium. When we realized this again during COVID, that we can switch Everything does not have to be in person, etc. But you can't do that if half your time is wasted in an hour-long meeting because of connectivity issues. So stable connectivity, and then what is it that you can access and cannot access through this? And this then becomes a policy issue, the level of filtering that is being done, right? And ad hoc, where research students will say we can access this or we cannot access that. You can't have this disparity, whether it's sort of urban, rural, also what you have access to, what you don't have access to, which is often on a whim. And this is something that we do need to sort out. And there's no circumventing this. If you're going to, introduce social media rules like we did, and then have a lot of like platforms say, well, we're not going to do business here, or we're going to have to shut down if these prevail. Or for your local content creators or people who are using social media, and they are then going to have to contend with something we put up, we can be held liable for in fines in millions, or it being terminated, or a platform being terminated. This kind of sword hanging over your head without any sort of certainty. Law and policies are supposed to provide you legal cover and certainties and guide you how you can possibly, your behavior or whatever your acts or whatever you need to do. There needs to be some clarity. When you bring ambiguous laws, which give cluster a lot of power in the hands of regulators or law enforcement, then there's an automatic chilling effect. And so a lot of things that you could possibly do, you're going to hold back from.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important to understand. And what I think is interesting about that comment is that we're talking about, access at several levels, I think, because on the one hand, there is, of course, just core affordability issues. There are issues of just what is the quality of access that you are receiving, whether you're in a tier 1 city or whether you're living in kind of a geographically marginalized area. And then there is another conversation once you are on the internet, who can, what kind of content can you access? How stable is even that content access, and what does that look like for people? And so I think that both those issues are ones that will have to be tackled if we are to kind of make meaningful progress. But in terms of that, when you, in kind of conversations that you've had with users, so we're talking about the individual on the ground, can you give us some insight into what would make them feel safer in their online interaction?
Well, one is safety itself, right? And when we're talking about inclusion, or let's say inclusion of women, or inclusion of marginalized communities, the first thing is their safety online, to exist online. A lot of women are actually driven off platforms because of the predatory nature, and that there is no recourse. So this is a conversation that's ongoing with companies as well, right? In terms of your reporting mechanisms and guidelines, and how do you make these spaces safer. But we understand that with internet and with technology, obviously there exists vulnerabilities, and we don't operate under the illusion that there can be foolproof safety or security. But at least as and when issues are arising, it shouldn't be more unsafe to exist there, to express yourself, to do business, which it has become. And so we also have to cater to this side of things when we talk about inclusion, when we talk about existing in the same space, and what you have access to. And they don't. So in most households, I mean, again, in terms of like the way that we are set up as a society, who gets access to a laptop or the phone or connectivity, etc. And when you do, and if something happens, even though you're the victim, your access gets taken away, right? And so you're faulted for what happens to you because you chose to enter this space. And this is something that should be the primary role of, this is where law enforcement and regulators should also be focusing their attention instead of the things that they tend to focus on, right? Similarly, where consumer rights and user rights are concerned, this is something that, I mean, supposedly PTA has a consumer directorate. And even I've attempted several times when there are internet-related complaints. But when these things get nowhere, and you see action on completely things that are beyond the mandate, then obviously your regulators, your law enforcement is not doing the job that they're actually supposed to to provide stable access or that balancing of rights or protection of consumer rights that needs to happen. Also against, companies usurping. I mean, in Karachi, we had an instance where due to cable operators and internet companies, they decided that they're going to shut down their services. Now, you cannot decide as a service provider that you are going to terminate services that consumers are paying you for because you have a rift with those laying down lines or a particular cantonment. This is not how it works, but the fact is that this happens more often than not, and this is the norm here. And then you have no recourse, and having no recourse then becomes a huge issue, where this is not the most reliant medium to be on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's interesting in that is that, again, we're kind of talking about consumer protection. We're talking about issues of recourse. And what I wonder is, Farooq, I'd love to hear from you how you have dealt with some of these issues, because I think you're working with a particularly marginalized group, which, has some of the issues that Fariha has pointed out, that this tends to be a segment where social norms kind of come into play more. And so how have you dealt with some of these challenges to bring women into the fold and kind of help them feel protected, but also kind of enforce some of the consumer protection standards that would be expected of any business in operating in the digital economy?
Yeah, so from a trust building perspective, there are two things. One, obviously, providing efficient and effective customer service to ensure that if there are any issues, they're dealt with as quickly as possible. Second, in terms of money or payment facilitation or transactions, whether there's a robust enough dispute resolution process to ensure that customers feel safe when it comes to their money, not just in terms of digital payments, but also in terms of money stuck somewhere or the ability to make payments on time, right? So, and as we've seen in the past, your performance matters a lot, because if you have new customers coming in and the word of mouth is that company A or company B is quite prompt and fair in terms of their dealings with the customers, it automatically brings that level of confidence within the new customers. Secondly, there has to be a lot of awareness and literacy that needs to be done. We've seen in the past where with a lot of our customers, just trying to convince them that the informal broskas have a certain level of risk because nothing is written. It's all verbal contracts, verbal commitments, and people could go back on their commitments. Whereas the formal sector has documentation, has policies and procedures, in a lot of cases are regulated. So there is enough legal recourse available for the consumers to be able to hold those companies or those institutions accountable. Third, providing them information in terms of how to interact with the companies when they're using digital means. So providing that transparency, be it through videos, be it through WhatsApp groups, be it through voice notes, just to help them, kind of do hand-holding to help them understand that this is how you need to manage your affairs. This is how you need to interact with these platforms to ensure that their institutions don't take advantage of the lack of information or lack of understanding of these consumers. So there's no one right answer. It has to be a combination of different efforts to ensure that the consumer not only feels comfortable, but has the right information to be able to rely on and say, this is how I'm going to do it, and this provides me the most comfort.
Yeah, absolutely. I particularly appreciate that, we're talking about multimodal strategies to get to people and reach them. So you were mentioning whether it's through WhatsApp groups, whether it's through kind of other modes of communication. It's important to give people several channels to get information, to give them kind of basic just indicators about how they can interact, and building in protections even at the kind of, beyond that, even at the device level. So all of that is really appreciated. I think kind of zooming back out, because we've gone deep into, I think, more of the demand side perspective, zooming back out for a second. If we think about future planning, what are some of the next steps that we need to prioritize to increase both the integration and retention of different communities within the digital landscape? Harisab, maybe we can start with you. If there are any specific interventions that you think are required to advance Pakistan's digital landscape, we'd love to hear about those, and perhaps even some comments on how different actors can work together to help with the digital ecosystem. Harisab, you're muted right now.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. When we talk about Pakistan digital landscape, I think we need to have a few considerations in mind. Unfortunately, all the telcos who provide the connectivity, which I say meaningful connectivity, their average rate per user is very low. Even look, for example, anyone, we know in our circle would be using $1,000 phone, but we will not be spending maybe $20 on internet bandwidth. The price of a roti or a naan, which 15 or 10 years ago was maybe 5 rupees, and now even the internet cost is still the same in Pakistan. And if we compare with the other countries, Pakistan has the lowest ARPU in the region and highest in the taxes. So I think the biggest intervention needs to come from the policy in terms of that reducing taxes. Once we reduce the taxes, then the telco operators will go and expand the network and provide a better connectivity. And then, all of us, whoever the entrepreneurs are, or the startups, or the e-commerce businesses, or telehealth, or any other financial inclusion startups would actually get the benefit out. So I think that's the most important intervention is. Secondly, our macroeconomic conditions. Our operation costs are rising day by day. Inflation costs are rising. Our fuel prices have jumped recently. Unfortunately, foreign currency dollar is not stable. So it's very difficult for any business to plan, budget, and look for a return, because everyone who gets into it is obviously looking for a business interest where they get return on their asset, and the bottom line should be green, not red. So these are the fundamental issues which we have, which needs to be addressed to have a better digital landscape. When I said about the ARPU, you'd be surprised that we have a less than $1 at this point of time, which is average rate per user. And in UAE and in Middle East, it's over $20. In Europe, it's over $30. Even in US, it's over $40. Even if you look at our neighboring country, it's over $5 and $10. So we are really at that low level. And secondly, I think the awareness. A lot of us talked about the internet in terms of to use and everything. It has to start from us, from every home. There are a lot of positive and good things about it, but they obviously that comes with its technology, so you can't just control it all the time. And someone rightly put it that you cannot control whatever comes out. But we can create awareness, and we can tell them what are the good things, what are the positives, and how to make the best out of it, rather than focusing on something which is negative or which is not right. So I guess, and especially for the women also. So we have to create this awareness, even in doing their businesses, or even for their own privacy, or even for their own different apps which they use. They should be aware of what are the pros and cons, and from us and from different forums, we need to create that awareness. So they should be aware. So where I feel is that the awareness is not there, and we have to really build that, especially among the women and the marginalized communities.
Great. And Harisab, specifically for your own kind of planned interventions in the future, are there any challenges that you foresee that you feel like will have to be tackled head on? For example, I think Fariha mentioned something which has to do kind of with right-of-way policy implementation. So kind of any thoughts about, hindrances that you need to tackle head-on to kind of double our fiberization rate as you guys are planning?
Yeah, right of way policy was an issue, but it's been sorted out and the policy has been implemented. But unfortunately, even the players who has to, take different right of way approvals and everything, they don't even know, what are the mechanisms where they do not get it. For example, I just tell you, there was an issue. I'm not going to name an operator. They came to me and they said, okay, we're not getting a right of way. I said, what is the next way forward? Have you read the right of way policy? For that, you need to raise it to that level and we can address it. Oh, we forgot. We didn't know that. So I guess a lot of people, you don't even know what the policy entails and how it can be properly utilized. When it comes to right of way only, specifically, you asked me about that. As far as universal service is concerned, as I just explained, we have worked with the operators in 3 years, which is equivalent to the work of 13 years since the company is established. And I think we still want to take it further. We want to do it accelerated more faster pace. But right now, at this point of time, operators are not in a position to match our pace. And there are reasons for it. And there are valid reasons for them. A bit of a macroeconomic challenge, a bit of LC challenges, a bit of an import issues. So as far as the government of Pakistan is concerned, and as far as the USF, the Ministry of IT and Telecom is concerned, we are totally supportive of the telcos. We want to, because this fund is their contribution, we want to use that fund with them. As soon as they want to push us more, we would like to push further more. So at this point of time, we need more support from the operators that they want to do they want to go to the rural area. They want to do that. If we get that support, we will, grow and with a much faster pace, and we can accelerate our digital connectivity landscape in the rural areas.
Yeah, appreciate that. I think, your comments kind of highlight that there's a real macroeconomic and business case complexity to the situation, which goes beyond any one kind of individual body. And there's kind of an interconnected landscape within which we're operating, which kind of in tandem are going to have to work on some of these issues together. So Asim Saab, to you, similar question. In terms of future planning, what are next steps that you think need to be prioritized, both kind of generally for the digital ecosystem at large, but specifically for the work that Ignite is planning as well?
Gee, Neha, as I was mentioning that we have recently completed a study with an international consultant and identified the issues which are being faced for further growth of our startup and freelancing ecosystems. They have identified multiple issues, including like cumbersome processes for company registrations. Too much documentation is required by different regulators. Lots of approvals needed from different government organizations. Then there are even issues for opening bank accounts for freelancers and startups. Of course, we know there's no international payment gateway in the country at present. Then there are repatriation and conversion issues with banks. It takes a long time to repatriate profits or even to make payments to foreign vendors. So this discourages IT firms and startups to keep their foreign earnings here. They just remit what is needed to cover their operational costs every year, and majority of their income stays abroad in foreign accounts. So we'll actually be holding meetings with different regulators, including State Bank and SECP, FPR, to highlight some of these issues and to decide the way forward to resolve these issues, to remove these roadblocks so that we can bring more of that forex into Pakistan and also increase our freelancing exports. That is our ultimate goal. Although last year we had a phenomenal year for our startups, where we had a 5 times increase in startup investments last year, around growing to $370 million. This year also, Pakistani startups have raised more than $340 million so far. But even the global startup funding has reduced by 30-40% this year, and Pakistani startups are also feeling the effects of that. Investments in startups have slowed down in second half of this year. So we also need to encourage local investment. We shouldn't just be relying on foreign investors. Last year, 95% of the investment made in our startups was by foreign investors. So we need to educate our local investors, corporate groups, that they can get a better return on their investments through investing in high growth and promising startups instead of just real estate and stocks and other investment vehicles. So we plan on conducting workshops in this investor education area also.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I think, again, that is highlighting the kind of interconnected areas which are impacting freelancers, because it goes beyond just the skilling aspect. There's also a payments aspect to it. There's a global integration aspect to it, which all needs to be taken into account. Farooq, for you, Uran is we'd love to hear more about kind of what Uran's plans are for the next year and what your goals are as an organization, but also what are kind of supportive interventions that you require from different parties in the digital ecosystem. If you could point to some of those, we'd love to hear it.
Sure. So, so the product that we're working with, right, committees, it is a combination of, it is revolving credit, right? So there's some customers who would be getting credit, but there's some customers who would be saving. Right? So credit risk assessment is and has always been a major challenge in the country. In the absence of a converged platform where you could go in and look at customer behavior and not just demographics to make sure that you're assessing your credit risk properly, that is unfortunately missing. So there needs to be a lot of effort to make sure that something like that is developed and made available to companies that are looking to work in the financial inclusion space. The other thing is KYC. We understand that NADRA allows regulated entities access to CNIC information. There is also access to CNIC and mobile SIM verification. These are not available to entities that are not regulated or are still in the regulatory process. How do we tackle that? So those are some of the challenges that I feel, if overcome in a timely manner, could really help companies that are trying to work on the financial inclusion agenda to grow significantly in the upcoming months. That is our plan. We want to make sure that the trust and the communities that we've built with our customers, we continue to grow them and reach a point where obviously we are able to raise more funds and allow the investors and the general population at large to benefit from some of the products and services that we're looking to push into the market.
Yeah, it's interesting because for a second, thought we'd get through the conversation without talking about digital ID at all, but I think KYC is kind of a related concept to that. I appreciate you bringing that up. I think it is interesting that NADRA is, I think, starting to move in the direction of exploring not just what a full-fledged digital ID is going to look like, but also experimenting now with, would it be valuable to create sandboxing and an open API integration layer for new organizations that are popping up. And I think if those are executed in the right way, those can add a lot of value to the ecosystem. So Fariha, finally with you, any comments on, I think you mentioned like a lot of the areas that do require intervention. So, we'd love to kind of hear a summary of that, but also, are there particular areas where you feel like there has been good progress made that you'd like to highlight and you feel like are worthy of attention? Love to hear that as well.
I mean, certainly where we've come as an industry, right? And we've made a lot of strides. And if you look at the startup culture, entrepreneurs, etc., the services, we have come a long way. And also the recognition and reliance on internet services as sort of a mainstay and not the fringe like it used to be. So, but when we are moving in this direction, you need a lot more in terms of policy changes that are going to cement this place for the industry and enable it to grow, right? And like I said earlier, stability, policy certainty, legal certainty. We still do not have data privacy and protection. So whether we speak of a NADRA or companies or telcos or whoever, these are things that we have to move towards, and especially like e-banking, and where you are, and we've moved into a space where we are making transactions online and how to keep them secure. So there's the data privacy and protection aspect of it, which will then open out more avenues for this industry, right? Because then there are global regulations that you need to adhere to, which then you don't currently. I mean, this has been a long-standing conversation in terms of PayPal services in Pakistan. So there's all of that. And then in terms of trust building or safety net, it can't be that somebody who faces a breach then has to undertake this arduous sort of bureaucratic legal a process and then also come out with nothing in return, right? This is especially true of financial claims. So the recovery is not swift, and once it happens, the damage is done, and there's no way that you're going to see that again, whether as a result of some banking scam or something that you were targeted by. And this is where law enforcement and regulatory authorities, where you talk about awareness, there's a responsibility that lies on their shoulders as well. They have a platform and they have that level of visibility where they can say, so, for example, phishing scams, one or the other, whether it's through SMS, whether it's through an email that you're going to receive, the scams are common. So also as adoption is increasing, as more people are turning to internet-based services, how are you going to educate them and make them aware of the things that don't cause them harm? This is another side of harm that people are facing as well. So that also needs to be looked at the policy level. There are also awareness raising things that need to happen. And then on the other side of content and consuming that, where you can't have this control mindset and policing mindset for everything. What you can do, so, I mean, there's harm and there's good. There's a lot of content out there. We've always said internet is fundamentally different from TV. So you can't treat it the same way. Where we're talking about the safety of children and content that's appropriate, you have ways of learning from other jurisdictions where you could, and this is something that has been suggested over very many years, that you can provide value-added services, and that can be a business opportunity as well for those who want to and don't have the technical means. Roll it out so at the household level that can be done. But you can't turn into a nanny state, and you can't be dictating to adults what they consume or what they don't consume, because that is the sort of, they need to be able to sift through it. And then the very fine line right now, because of the ambiguity that exists in policy and law between what can be accidental, what could be something that we are annoyed by, and what constitutes a crime. There are gray areas, and there should not be gray areas. That legal certainty needs to exist, and you can't. And this is something that I would actually recommend, that businesses seem to think that it's not really a concern when we're talking about the social impact of things, right? And you operate in a different sort of setup, and you have maybe legal and regulatory advisors, etc. But with the law that exists right now, the liability for whose name the internet connection is in, and the trace that leads back there, and what activity was conducted through that, or the devices. I mean, we've had examples in our past where IT companies have mistakenly been targeted because wrong information was provided, and there were raids and servers were seized. And for IT businesses to be shut down in this manner, and then when it was a mistake, there was no acknowledgement of the mistake, and there is no compensation for the loss that you faced. Now, whether as a citizen, an individual, or a business, these are the things that need, intervention. These are the things that have to be rectified if we want to foster trust in this sector.
Absolutely. I think stability is going to be key going forward. I think there's stability in planning and kind of core agendas. And then, of course, there's just stability and clarity in what are the rules and how are they enforced and what do they really mean for everyone. I also really appreciate you bringing up the value that having a strong data protection law will bring, in that it is not only creating protections for individuals, but it's actually creating new opportunities for businesses and for the entire ecosystem at large. Because I think too often when we talk about regulation, we think of it as limiting instead of it being as something that can, be supportive and expansive of the digital ecosystem as well. Well, with that, I know that we've hit a time boundary, so I'd like to thank you all very much for your time today. This is a really rich discussion. And just to summarize some of the major points that came out of it, I think, it's clear that work is being done across the digital ecosystem on both the supply side and the demand side. However, there are still gaps that need to be tackled. It's clear that in this ecosystem of actors, there needs to be coordinated effort around some key areas. Trust came up, I think, quite clearly as one of them. There is a need for clarity among consumers and citizens about what the requirements are for them, but also about how they can operate in a digital ecosystem and how they can kind of protect themselves in this new world as we kind of move towards digital. I think there were some great comments made about there is a macro environment within which we're operating, and those realities are going to have to be reflected in the type of initiatives that we take. So whether that is trying to understand the needs of, for example, freelancers and expanding beyond just the skilling, looking kind of at some of the financial regulations that require, or if that's looking at kind of businesses and how they can strengthen digital infrastructure in this country, we need to be looking at this comprehensively. And really, really appreciate all your time, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.